Our next topic is fast tracking Gen AI in retail. Our speaker is a data science leader with over 22 years of experience who loves combining tech, uh, data, and analytics to solve business problems. Put your hands together for Mr. Vinay Mony, who heads the business analytics services at Merkle. Guys, Vinay, all yours.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to be here today. I'm going to be joined by my colleague Srishti. She's going to kick the presentation off, and we're going to have an exciting 20 minutes.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Shrishti and I have around 20 to 25. I have a lot of experience with retail tech and hence why I'm here because we're fast tracking Gen AI with retail tech. So enough about me before we talk more. How about we do something a little bit unorthodox and start with some jokes? So, how many programmers do you think it takes to change a light bulb? Well, if you know programmers, I think you know the answer. It's none. It's a hardware issue. We don't touch that. So the second one, okay, yeah. Why do developers prefer dark mode? Any guesses? I mean, light attracts bugs. Why will we want that? So, jokes aside, as we all know, we've heard previously that Gen AI and AI in general has been the talk of the town lately. We have a lot of capability for improvement and innovation with Gen AI. In fact, though, ever since ChatGPT launched in November 2022, we have had a lot of innovation come up. The jokes that we put across earlier were something that we got from ChatGPT, actually. It was not something that we came up with. So, post-November 2022, as I said, GenAI has taken the leap forward. But still, there are some issues in terms of adoption across the industry. And if you see here in the chart, you can see that there are about 25% of commercial leaders who say that they will never use 5% who are saying that they will never use AI in their current implementations when it comes to retail. But on the other hand, there are 25% that are saying that they want to use it. So clearly there's a demand for it, but they are facing some setbacks. And if you see here, Gartner says that Gen AI is the next big thing. It's on the same track as the internet, the steam locomotive. It's going to change the face of the earth very soon. But what are the adoption challenges that we see here? So some of those come from, they come from different categories. You have issues coming in from data security concerns, you have some ethical concerns around job displacement, you even have financial concerns. So we have come up with an approach that can be followed to augment that, and we call it the Augment AI approach. And I will now hand the mic over to Vinay.
Yeah, thanks. So, in the earlier sessions, we've heard the opportunity as well as risks with Gen AI. And the technology is at a time when the adoption curve is maximum from an experimentation standpoint. And typically, technologies at this front need an augment with humans, right? And that's what we are proposing that we will see over the next at least 2 to 3 years. And we'll go through some examples. Oops. So if an enterprise, so the problem we are trying to address is what are the adoption challenges? How do enterprises adopt Gen AI? And here are 3 modes that enterprises would use typically. So we've all heard about large language models. The first entry into using large language models is through prompting, right? And a lot of use cases are being built here. But as we go ahead into the other phases, there is the cost and complexity trade-off where enterprises want to contextualize a lot of their answers coming from these large language models. And that's where you go into fine-tuning of the model. So you'd want to build models using these large language models and then finally build your own model, right? So examples of these are on the extreme right. Bloomberg has built its own Bloomberg GPT. Why? Because it already has its own assets. All the historical data coming from the news articles and research it has, and it wants to create a user experience that curtails the user to its own knowledge, right? So that's the need for it to build its own GPT or its own model. Whereas organizations like ourselves, we are building a framework, a solution that allows rapid adoption of these large language models. So if anybody has been in the advanced analytics space, if you were to build a customer lifetime model, it would take at least 4 weeks to 6 weeks of just getting the data and building those models. The approach here is to build rapidly using these large language models. So if you customize your model to the data, you could see a customer lifetime model being built in less than 24 hours, right? So that's the power of being able to fine-tune existing models. So enterprises getting into building, using GenAI and adopting use cases, these are largely the three ways one would do that. So having said that, like I said, in the hype cycle that we are in with GenAI, there is a lot of ROI just using prompts. We have barely scratched the surface there. So even before you think of building your own GPT, a lot of enterprises need to explore what just prompting and smart prompting can do. And we are here to show you some examples to prove that. And we are talking about retail. And these are typical functions that you will see in a retail organization. Marketing and merchandising probably being the most powerful in a retail organization. So merchandising, all merchants have to do is make sure that the right product is present to the customer at the right time and in the most presentable manner. That is the function of a merchandising group. And a typical use case, especially in the e-commerce world for merchants, is how do you describe products on a retail platform? And anybody who's worked on commerce will know that's called a meta description, right? So all the nice descriptions that you see on e-commerce platforms, there is a whole army of people today writing those descriptions so that they can grab eyeballs and click-throughs of their customers. There are challenges to that. Because Google is a primary mode for discoverability of these products, there are limitations that Google puts in terms of character length, in terms of usage of words and so on, right? The other aspect also, it has to be creative. It has to be unique, right? So it takes a large number of ad copywriters, linguists to get these descriptions out. This is a perfect use case for GenAI because this is about generating content, right? So what we've built using GenAI is the ability to create such content just using sort of minimal information about the brand tone, about the product attributes, and that being fed to these copywriters. I say fed because go back to what the theme that we're talking about. It is about augment AI. What this does is take a product description like this. This is a starting point now for the ad copywriter, right? Now, if they want to change something, customize something from a brand tone perspective, that is a matter of seconds or minutes rather than building the whole catalog of these meta descriptions for, let's say, 1 million SKUs, right? So again, augment AI and using GenAI. Another example is marketing, and anybody who's been in the SEO space will appreciate this use case. So in SEO, what you do, you deal with a lot of keywords, right? Everybody's trying to understand patterns in consumer keywords, right? So this is an example of a retailer, and you would find keywords around hoodies and apparel and so on, right? So again, there are an army of people today just mining patterns from these keywords. And why this is apt for a GenAI use case is because these technologies are able to get the semantic meaning of language, right? So in this case, we run this list of keywords, which is about 36 to 40,000 keywords, through what is called a vector database, right? A vector database is a specialized database that is able to get the embeddings of these phrases and get this relationship amongst these phrases. So what you see in the second column there is it is able to get a similarity between phrases, right? And it is also by that nature being able to group what phrases are in the same group. So it's almost like a centroid of a cluster. So it has done two things for you now. It has shrunk your data sets. You don't need to go through all the 36,000 keywords. You can deal with, let's say, a quarter or half of that keywords because you've already identified representative phrases. The other thing it has done is it has given you that score, which you can use as a cutoff. So it's not a black box. So if you want really similar words, you can play around with those keywords, right? So, and then you put this into a large language model to ultimately get what are called a hierarchy, right? Or a topic of these keywords. So this goes into the site structure of a website, right? So from a consumer experience standpoint, if somebody is looking for hoodies, you as a website designer, you know that under apparel you will have hoodies, and under hoodies you will have certain brands, right? So this is an important input from a discoverability of a brand and its products. So Merkle does a lot of analytics, and we want to make sure that we eat our own dog food. So another good use case is a lot of number crunching happens today, especially in retail, because there's just so many SKUs, so many products, so many customers. And querying databases is a big activity, right? If anybody's worked with SQL databases, any form of SQL databases, would know that still there is a lot of bandwidth just going into getting data, right? How would you like to just write in English and get the data that you want, right? So this is no longer fiction. So this is a typical app that now is used in most of our database interfaces, which just gives you a lot of the data on a trigger of a prompt, right? So a lot of this now is reality, and we are into the world where analysts need not be data scientists, right? You don't need to know Python, you don't need to know SQL. As long as you have an analytical mindset, you can still run good business analysis. Having said that, what are the challenges in taking GenAI to the next level in terms of adoption? From a technology perspective, a key adoption challenge is going to be context, right? Why? Because even in the earlier session, somebody said a lot of these large language models, especially ChatGPT, had its memory or history till 2021, right? Which was a major constraint, although that's removed with the introduction of Turbo. But a lot of these models have been fed certain training data, and a lot of their responses will be based on the training data. But for enterprises, if they want to use apps, it has to be custom to their data, right? Imagine if you want to create a bot for your HR policies. It has to be based on the policies of your company, not a general policy, right? So that's where in-context learning comes, where you want to make sure that your GenAI app learns from your context and not the general world context. So that's where a lot of methods like RAG or retrieval augmentation grouping comes in, and a lot of current systems are using that will make sure that your GenAI bot refers to your data, your context, rather than the general knowledge that these models have. I've already talked about vector databases. The other aspect, like somebody said, is cost. It's all fine to have API calls to these large language models, but they can run up a huge bill, right? A prompt that will have at least, let's say, 10,000 tokens could easily get you a bill of $100, right? So imagine if this is a customer-facing app. So more and more, like somebody said, ESG, there is also the practical problem of running up a huge bill and cost. So there have to be strategies that make sure your calls are efficient when you refer to these models. From a leadership perspective, an important aspect is legal, right? Typically, as technology folks, we always consider legal considerations as a irritant, right? But in the case of GenAI, I think it is important for us to work with a function like legal to be able to articulate how an organization can protect itself, right? So somebody said copyright is an issue. It's a genuine issue. But does copyright become an issue for text, or is it only for images? Right? Today in our worlds, a lot of the issues, a lot of the use cases are about text generation. And when we worked closely with our legal team, it was a revelation for them that a lot of the text need not come under a copyright issue. Right? So it is important to demystify GenAI even for the legal team. So work with the legal team rather than keep a hand's length distance, expect them to formulate clauses for you. I think it's a collaborative effort in educating the legal team and coming up with clauses to protect your organization will go a long way in adoption. The other is also employee apprehensions. I've heard a lot of organizations not wanting to venture into GenAI build because they don't know what will happen to their employees, right? And that's where we go back to our Augment AI theme, because it is important as a leadership group to make sure that this is an enabler for the employees and not a cannibalization. There are going to be efficiencies, but like any technology, the hours saved, the creativity that can be generated out of that should be employed in sort of fruitful, higher ROI bandwidth, right? So it is important to have a plan from a people perspective of how you're going to use the employees that are going to get these efficiencies into more creative aspects. And finally, from how do you go on to this journey? Like any technology, you really have to go with a fine comb on what use cases you want to tackle. Clearly, GenAI is about generation. Let's not confuse GenAI with general AI, right? Which has already been there. There has been predictive analytics, there has been a lot of RPA that come under AI. Anything that has a generative context, just like we saw, if you're generating text or if you're generating images, those are today the use cases that need to be tackled. So build a plan around what are those use cases, what is the ROI that you're going to get from that, and then invest your capacity, bandwidth, cost, tech to building these use cases. There is no magic bullet to identify what that is. There has to be a thorough analysis of where you employ that. And finally, governance and compliance. An important part of this is technology. The way we have gone about this is having a central group that provides the access to these large language models. There are enough cases today, for example, I think in a large electronics and consumer goods company, where somebody put code on a GitHub of these models, right? So that's the last thing you'd want to do. So a central group that manages access to these models within an organization is an absolute necessity. And that gives a lot of security for even the legal team, because at least that part of any constraint, any headwinds coming from a consumer group is taken care of. So finally, we are at the cusp of something special with GenAI, like you saw in some of those use cases. The opportunity for us is to build on that. The efficiencies can lead to a lot of creativity that can be deployed in better consumer experiences. That's the hope with GenAI. And I think with some of these adoption challenges, and if they are overcome, we will see that happening over the next 12 months. Thank you, everybody.
Guys, keep the applause going on, please. Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Shrishti, for that walkthrough of the Gen AI model in retail. Can you please come on this side of the stage? Let me just felicitate you real quick. Come, guys. First. The ladies first. Okay. Again, it's like getting it down. All right. Guys, keep the claps going on, yeah? They're still going back.